Look at him with your children. He is laughing. He is fully present. He gets down on the floor with them. He has the patience you wish he had for everything else. He is the man you fell in love with. And watching him with your kids, you can see exactly who he is capable of being. Now watch what happens when the kids go to sleep. The door closes, the patience disappears. The man who just spent 2 hours completely engaged and emotionally available becomes someone else. Distant, checked out, irritable at the suggestion of a real conversation, staring at a screen with nothing left to give anyone else in the room. You have felt this shift for a long time. And you have probably also felt the guilt that comes with resenting it, because society does not give you permission to be unhappy with a man who is such a devoted father. But the loneliness you feel inside that marriage is real. It is not ingratitude. It is not asking for too much. And it is quietly destroying something that will be very difficult to recover if nothing changes. This is not about him choosing the children over you. It is not about another woman. It is not even, in most cases, about a loss of love. It is about a specific psychological mechanism that activates in men when they become fathers, a mechanism that most couples never identify, never name, and therefore never address with the right strategy. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly why this split happens, why it is not entirely his conscious decision, and what you can actually do to bring the partner back without dismantling the father. Before we go further, hit the like button right now. This tells the algorithm to surface this video for other women who are living through this exact dynamic in silence and do not yet have a name for what they are experiencing. The mechanism at the root of this is called cognitive compartmentalization. Men are wired, through both biology and decades of social conditioning, to manage their identities in separate, sealed compartments. This is not a flaw. It is a pressure management strategy that serves specific functions under stress. When a child is born, everything reorganizes. The father compartment becomes the dominant one, and it makes psychological sense why. Fatherhood comes with clear, measurable demands. Protect the child, provide financially, engage physically, be present. These are concrete roles with visible outputs. Success is legible. You can see it, you can measure it. The husband role is none of those things. It is abstract, emotionally complex, and constantly shifting in what it requires. It cannot be completed. There is no point at which it is done. The metrics of success are invisible and change without notice. So when his brain is operating under the sustained pressure of parenthood, it makes an unconscious prioritization decision. The father compartment stays open. The husband compartment gets deprioritized. Not because he does not love you, because his neurological system has quietly determined that it does not have the capacity to keep both fully operational simultaneously. He is not choosing to neglect you. He is managing the only way his psychology currently knows how, and the husband role is the one that gets managed down first. Understanding this does not excuse the impact, but it completely changes the strategy for addressing it. Let us go one level deeper, because the compartmentalization only tells part of the story. Every person operates with a finite amount of emotional energy per day. It cannot be borrowed from tomorrow. It cannot be manufactured at 10 o'clock at night because someone needs it. The sustained work of active parenting drains that energy at a rate most people significantly underestimate. It requires constant attunement, constant patience, constant suppression of one's own needs in service of a child who cannot yet manage their own. By the time the children are asleep, he is not just physically tired. He is in what psychologists refer to as an emotional refractory period. His capacity to give, to feel, to be present has reached its floor. He is in recovery mode, not disengagement mode. The distinction matters. When you approach him in that state and ask for connection, meaningful conversation, or emotional intimacy, you are asking him to draw from a resource that is genuinely depleted. He is not choosing to withhold. He has nothing accessible to give you in that moment. Here is where the real tragedy of this dynamic sits. He feels justified. In his internal accounting, he showed up fully today. He was a great father. He provided. He was engaged. He believes that performance of duty entitles him to shut down and decompress. He cannot see from inside his own experience that you have been waiting all day for a version of him that never actually comes home to you. The children receive the best of him. You receive what is left, and what is left is almost nothing. If this is your living room every single night, subscribe to the channel now. We publish deep psychological relationship breakdowns every week that you cannot afford to miss, but depletion alone does not explain everything. There is another layer operating underneath, and it is the one that is most dangerous to romantic intimacy specifically. Before children arrived, you occupied a specific defined role in his subconscious. You were the person he pursued, his lover, his confidant, the most interesting presence in his life. After children, that role quietly and involuntarily shifts. In the subconscious of many men, the woman they love slowly migrates from lover to something closer to the archetype of the domestic manager. Not his mother, literally, but the psychological category associated with authority, responsibility, scheduling, administration, and running things. Look honestly at the majority of your interactions with him over the past 30 days. How many of them were about household tasks, school logistics, finances, or childcare arrangements? If that is most of your shared communication, you have, without intending to, reinforced this reclassification in his subconscious. He has slowly stopped perceiving you as the woman he chose, and started perceiving you as the person who runs the household alongside him. This is not a character failure in him. It is a predictable psychological pattern with a specific, identifiable cause. He can be deeply devoted to you as a co-parent and simultaneously completely disconnected from you as a romantic partner, because those two versions of you now occupy entirely different categories in his mind. Desire does not coexist comfortably with domestic management in the male psychological structure, and if this reclassification is left unaddressed, it becomes the architecture of the marriage. It does not repair itself passively. It hardens. We also have to be honest about the provider and protector fallacy, because it explains a dimension of this suffering that rarely gets named. Most men were not raised to express love emotionally. They were raised to express it through action, through doing, through building, protecting, providing, and solving. That is the language their fathers modeled, the language they absorbed, and the language they still speak. It is not a language they consciously chose. It is the only fluency they were ever taught. When he becomes a father, every one of those conditioned instincts amplifies significantly. He works longer hours because the family needs more. He suppresses his own exhaustion because expressing it feels incompatible with being a provider. He declines help because needing it conflicts with his internalized identity as a protector. All of his love is being expressed constantly through output, through sacrifice, through showing up to a job he may hate because the alternative is failing his family. He looks at his own depletion and sees evidence of how much he loves you. You look at his absence and feel evidence of how little he cares. Neither of those experiences is wrong, but they are completely incompatible as long as they remain untranslated. He is speaking the language of functional love. You are starving for emotional love. The gap between those two languages, left unaddressed, quietly dismantles a marriage over years. He cannot comprehend why you are unhappy. He gave the family everything today. In his internal logic, that should register as devotion. The fact that it does not register that way for you genuinely does not compute. And that recurring failure to compute makes him feel perpetually misunderstood, which accelerates his withdrawal, which deepens your hunger for connection, which he experiences as yet another thing he cannot provide. Pay close attention to this next layer. It explains the emotional walls specifically, and it is the piece most people completely miss. Loving a child is the most terrifying form of vulnerability most men will ever encounter. That child is entirely dependent. The possibility of loss is ever present, unspoken, and completely overwhelming when it surfaces. To sustain that level of emotional exposure without collapsing, something in a man's architecture quietly closes in other areas of his life as a form of psychological self-protection. All of his unguarded tenderness gets channeled toward the children. They are safe. They offer love that is entirely unconditional, comes with no performance expectations, and carries no risk of judgment. They do not evaluate his income, his communication skills, or his capacity to be emotionally present on demand. The marriage carries none of that safety. The marriage has history. It has accumulated tension. It has the real and specific possibility of him being seen as insufficient, as failing, as not enough in ways that matter deeply to his sense of identity. That is a threat his nervous system has learned to avoid, so walls come up. Not because he stopped loving you, because loving you requires a kind of exposure that loving the children does not. With them, vulnerability is invisible. With you, it is the thing most likely to be used against him in a moment of conflict, even if you have never consciously done that. With them, he cannot lose. With you, he might. He can be completely unguarded on the living room floor with a 4-year-old and become an entirely closed person when the bedroom door shuts. He is not punishing you. He is protecting himself from the one person whose opinion of him carries enough weight to genuinely damage him. This protection mechanism leads directly to the most dangerous phase of the entire dynamic, the resentment loop. As you feel increasingly invisible inside the marriage, your behavior shifts in entirely predictable ways. You become critical, short-tempered. You make pointed comments about how he only has real energy for the children. You withdraw emotionally because reaching towards someone who never reaches back eventually stops feeling like an option worth taking. Every one of these responses is understandable. Every one of them is a natural reaction to chronic emotional hunger inside a relationship that is supposed to feel safe. But from inside his defensive framework, your behavior confirms the exact thing he has been quietly telling himself. He exhausts himself for this family every single day. And your response to that is perpetual dissatisfaction. Why would he risk being emotionally open with someone whose default orientation toward him is criticism? Why would he voluntarily lower the walls when every previous time he walked into conflict? His withdrawal becomes more complete. Your resentment sharpens further. The loop tightens. He retreats deeper into the father identity, which is the only space in his life currently offering him unconditional acceptance. You become more isolated inside a marriage that appears functional from the outside and feels completely empty from the inside. Both of you are suffering. Neither of you can see a way out because neither of you understands the actual mechanism keeping you trapped. This loop does not dissolve on its own. Waiting longer does not help. Escalating your demands does not help. It requires a completely different approach, and that is what we are going to lay out right now. The first move is to actively dismantle the domestic manager archetype that has formed around you in his subconscious. This requires creating a deliberate, protected separation between your identity as a co-parent and your identity as his partner. The time after the children are asleep cannot continue to function as an extension of household administration. No unpaid bills, no scheduling discussions, no logistical planning for tomorrow. That window becomes off-limits to everything that belongs to the parent relationship. It becomes the only space in your day where the romantic relationship exists independently of the parenting infrastructure. Then, you disrupt the pattern he has come to predict with absolute certainty. He is anticipating a version of you that is defined entirely by the day's exhaustion and domestic responsibility. Give him something he is not expecting. Change the environment. Shift your energy. Not as a performance, not as something you maintain until it is too tiring to continue, but as a deliberate act of refusing to let the demands of parenting become the only version of you he encounters after 6 o'clock. The woman he pursued before any of this existed has not disappeared. His subconscious has stopped looking for her because nothing in the environment has reminded him she is there. That reminder needs to come from you, consistently, deliberately, not as a one-time effort, as a sustained reorientation. The second step is applying positive reinforcement with precision. His emotional reserves are depleted. His self-perception as a husband is almost certainly already fragile, whether he shows that or not. If you approach him with a list of grievances, however legitimate those grievances are, his nervous system will register it as a threat, and his withdrawal will accelerate immediately. Instead, become highly skilled at noticing the smallest moments where he functions as your partner rather than as a father. When he does something specifically for you, not for the children, not for the household in general, but for you as a woman, acknowledge it immediately and specifically. Separate your recognition of him as a parent from your recognition of him as a man. Speak directly to the husband. Tell him what it felt like when he looked at you a certain way. Tell him what it does to you when he handles something stressful without falling apart. Do not thank him for managing the children. That is fatherhood. Address the moments where you can see the partner. What you are constructing, one specific acknowledged moment at a time, is a low-risk pathway back to the husband compartment. You are showing his nervous system that turning toward you does not automatically lead to confrontation or emotional demand. You are demonstrating that it can produce something that feels like relief, like being received rather than evaluated. You are creating the conditions in which the walls become unnecessary rather than trying to force them down. Finally, be honest with yourself about the timeline. This is not a 2-week project. Years of entrenched psychological defense patterns do not reverse quickly. There will be nights where you try this approach and he does not respond the way you hoped. That is not failure. That is the process. The measure of progress is not a single good evening. It is a sustained shift in the dynamic over months. What is not acceptable is continuing to do nothing while calling it patience. The alternative to active reconstruction is two people raising children competently in the same house while becoming progressively more unknown to each other. A marriage that functions efficiently as a logistical arrangement and has lost everything that made it a relationship. Stop trying to compete with your children for his emotional attention. That competition has no winner. The children will always hold a category of his love that is not available for redirection. That is not the problem to solve. The problem to solve is the romantic connection that belongs exclusively to the two of you, the one that predates the children and that the children cannot replace. That is what needs to be rebuilt. That is where your focus belongs. Invite him into a space where none of his roles apply. No provider required, no protector required, no exhaustingly perfect father required. Just the two of you, with the titles removed, in an environment where nothing has to be performed and nothing has to be managed. The man with an enormous capacity to love is already clearly visible. You watch him demonstrate it with your children every single day. Your task is not to create something in him that does not exist. It is to build the precise conditions where that same capacity gets oriented toward you. That is not guaranteed. Repair is never guaranteed, but it is possible in a way that simply waiting is not. And it begins the moment you stop responding to the symptoms of the dynamic and start engaging with the actual mechanism underneath it. The right map matters. You cannot navigate back to each other if you have been using the wrong one. If you want to go further into the psychology of what makes men emotionally available or permanently shut down, subscribe to the channel now. Hit the like button to help this reach other women who are navigating this exact situation without understanding what is driving it. Leave a comment below. Has this dynamic appeared in your relationship? What did it look like from where you